The first time I realized my HOA president might actually hate me was when she marched across my front yard in a designer coat, pointed at my tires like I'd parked a meth lab in the driveway, and told me I had 24 hours to remove my chains after I'd just worked 36 straight hours pulling strangers out of wrecks in an 18-inch blizzard. Yeah, that happened. Welcome to Cascade Heights, Colorado. It was January 2025, the kind of cold that makes your nose hairs snap, the kind of snow that turns the whole foothills outside Boulder into a postcard until you try to drive in it. My Ford F-350 rattled like a toolbox in a tumble dryer, chains clacking against the wheel wells as I crawled through the gates of our pristine little community. The roads were packed with ice, the plows were losing the war, and I was running on caffeine and adrenaline and the last thread of my patience. I shut the engine off and just sat there for a second, forehead on the steering wheel, breathing, trying to remember what it feels like to be a normal human being, not a paramedic who just watched a minivan spin like a toy on Highway 36, and then I saw boots cutting angry black marks into fresh snow. Straight across my lawn. Patricia Morrison, HOA president, clipboard queen, the kind of woman who smiles like she's about to fine you for breathing too loud. Jeremy Hutchinson, she called like my full name was a charge she could read in court. We need to talk about those chains on your vehicle. I got out of the truck and the cold slapped me awake. My station uniform still smelled like smoke and road salt and somebody else's bad night, and I'm standing there in my own driveway like I'm at inspection. You know what I mean? She stops a few feet away, folder tucked under her arm. HOA bylaws, of course, manicured hand flipping pages like she's performing a magic trick. Section 7, subsection 4, she said, eyes bright, voice sharp, chains, studded tires, or any equipment that can damage the community roads are prohibited. I blinked at her, slow, because my brain was still on the firehouse floor. Patricia, I'm a firefighter and paramedic. I need these chains. The roads up here are a mess. That's not my problem, she said, like she was reading weather off a menu. Rules apply to everyone equally. I don't care if you're a firefighter, a doctor, or the President of the United States. Then she hits me with it, like she's dropping a mic. Remove them, or you'll be fined $500 per day until they're off. $500 a day. For traction. In a declared winter emergency. I rubbed my face with both hands, trying not to laugh, trying not to scream, because when you're exhausted enough, anger feels like comedy. You realize if I can't get out of here for a call, people could die, I said. She did this little dismissive wave, like I was being dramatic about a hangnail. Don't be so dramatic, Jeremy. We have emergency services. That's what 911 is for. I stared at her. I am emergency services. Well, she said, bright pink violation notice already in her hand. When you're off duty, you're just another resident. 24 hours. Official warning. And then she turned around and walked back across my yard, leaving those boot prints behind her like a trail of spite. I went inside, dropped my gear, didn't even take my boots off right away, just collapsed into bed and slept so hard it felt like falling through the mattress. When I woke up it was dark. My phone had missed calls stacked like bad news. Station changes, my brother trying to plan dinner, and a voicemail from an unknown number. Mr. Hutchinson, this is Deborah from the Cascade Heights HOA Administrative Office. Please contact us to confirm compliance. I deleted it, showered, ate eggs like a man rebuilding his soul, and stepped back outside. Chains still on. And the thing is, it wasn't just inconvenient to take them off. It was stupid. Dangerous. The temperature had dropped again. The forecast was calling for more snow, and I'd already seen cars ditch themselves like they had a death wish. So I did what I always do when someone tells me something that smells wrong. Let me back up a sec. I called someone who actually deals in reality. Deputy Mike Reynolds, sheriff's office, buddy of mine. We'd crossed paths on enough scenes that we had that don't die on me kind of friendship. Mike, I said, weird question. Can an HOA legally stop me from using chains if my truck's registered as an emergency services vehicle? There was a pause, then a low chuckle. That's a new one. I'm not a lawyer, but Colorado's pretty clear about emergency vehicle exemptions, especially during declared emergencies. Why? So I told him, Patricia, the pink notice, the $500 a day nonsense. He got quiet. I could hear keys clicking. Yeah, if your truck's registered as emergency services, pretty sure it is, since you rolled up to that pileup last month in it, then the HOA can't prohibit necessary safety equipment. That would be like telling a cop they can't park a squad car in their driveway. I felt the first little spark of relief. Can you send me the statute numbers? Already doing it. Push back, and if they give you trouble, have them call us. So I went to work, chains clacking the whole drive, because even with them I watched cars slide into ditches like slow-motion mistakes. The shift was brutal: medical calls, a carbon monoxide scare, a sedan wrapped around a pole like somebody tried to gift wrap a tragedy. I got home the next morning, and there was another notice on my door, more official, more smug fines starting immediately. They'd driven by and documented my truck like it was wildlife. I called the HOA office. Deborah answered, voice sweet as poison. You failed to comply, she said. Deborah, I said, my vehicle is registered as emergency services. Under state statute, I'm exempt. Remove the fines. Long pause. I'll need to discuss this with Mrs. Morrison. The fines stand until the board decides. When do they meet? Next Wednesday at 7. Great, I said, jaw tight, I'll be there. For the next few days, I kept the chains on, because the snow kept coming, and every time I came home, another violation notice appeared like a little pink Christmas ornament of misery. Their math had my fines at $2,500, then $5,000, and honestly it felt like they were just picking numbers that sounded scary. Wednesday night I walked into the community center with my folder of printed statutes and documents like I was going to a court date, not a neighborhood meeting. The room smelled like stale coffee and fake authority. Patricia sat at the head table with the other board members. Richard Chin, the vice president, Martha Kellerman, the secretary, Steve Davidson, the treasurer, Linda Wu, and Patricia looked at me like I'd tracked mud onto her carpet. She ran the meeting through boring stuff, minutes, reports, neighborhood events. The whole thing felt like being trapped in a beige hallway, and then she finally says, compliance issue at 1847 Pine Ridge Court. Mr. Hutchinson, come forward. She put up photos of my truck on the projector like it was evidence in a murder trial, chains shining like I was guilty of something truly evil. $5,000 in fines, she announced. Refused to comply, disregard for community standards. May I speak now? I said. She nodded like she was granting me oxygen. I opened my folder. My name is Jeremy Hutchinson. I'm a paramedic and firefighter with Boulder County Fire Rescue. My truck is registered as an emergency response vehicle. Under state statute, during a declared emergency, HOAs cannot restrict emergency vehicles from using necessary safety equipment. Patricia snapped, that statute doesn't apply. You're not driving an ambulance. It applies, I said calm, because I'd learned early in my job that raising your voice rarely saves anybody. The law doesn't distinguish between a fire engine and a properly registered emergency response vehicle. Richard Chun leaned forward, took the paper, read it, and I saw his face change, the way a reasonable person looks when they realize the cliff is real. Patricia, he said, I think he might be right. She bristled. Rules are rules. The law supersedes bylaws, I said. Martha raised her hand, timid but steady. Maybe we should consult the attorney. Patricia did not like that. But Steve, the treasurer, looked like a man picturing lawsuit numbers. If we enforce fines that violate state law, he said, we could expose the HOA. Patricia tabled it, teeth clenched, and tried to end the discussion with fines stand until further review, which is a fancy way of saying, I'm going to keep punishing you while I figure out how not to lose. Outside in the parking lot, Richard caught up with me, quiet voice, apologetic. I'm sorry. She can be difficult. I'm going to push to get this resolved. I shook his hand, and for a second I thought, okay, sanity lives here somewhere. The next morning Mike called me laughing like he didn't know whether to be amused or annoyed. Your HOA president just called us. Wants us to write you a citation for tire chains. You're kidding. I told her HOA stuff is civil, we don't enforce that, and also you're exempt under state law, he said. She didn't like it. That was the moment it stopped being about chains and started being about Patricia needing to win. Then the email came, midnight from the HOA attorney, clear as daylight. Exemption applies, fines should be removed, bylaws should be updated. I forwarded it to Richard. He replied fast. Meeting tomorrow. Patricia's furious. The rest of us agree with the attorney. The next meeting was packed, word spreads in a neighborhood like smoke. Patricia tried to table again, Richard cut her off, made a motion to remove all fines, Martha seconded, Steve backed it, Linda raised her hand too, for votes to 1. Motion carried. Patricia stood up so fast her chair barked against the floor, stormed out like a villain at intermission, and I drove home thinking, okay, it's done. I was wrong. 2 days later I got a certified letter from a Denver law firm representing Patricia in her individual capacity, accusing me of harassment, slander, creating a hostile environment, demanding $5,000 and a public apology. I read it 3 times, waiting for the punchline, because it was that ridiculous. I called my attorney Marcus Palmer, the guy who handled my closing paperwork. He read it and sighed the sigh of a man who's seen every flavor of petty. Baseless. We respond. If she files, we counter for abuse of process. Then a city code enforcement notice showed up, claiming I was operating a business out of my home, citing my emergency vehicle as evidence. I called the inspector, Laura Chun, emailed my pay stubs, employment contract, registration, and within an hour she called back and apologized. This complaint seems personal, she said carefully, and it's a waste of resources. You know what I mean? That's government speak for somebody's playing games. Here's the twist I didn't expect. Linda Wu, the quiet board member, caught me at the grocery store like fate decided the produce aisle was where secrets happen. Jeremy, she said, lowering her voice, Patricia's obsessed. She brings you up constantly. Richard is considering pushing for her removal. There's a provision, but she has allies people think you're getting special treatment. Special treatment. For doing my job. For not dying on icy roads. Linda told me to show up at the next community meeting and speak directly. Let people hear it from me. Because rumors grow legs in places like ours. That meeting was packed, 70, 80 residents, quarter of the neighborhood. Someone asked about the chains, and Richard looked at me like, it's your turn. I stood up, told the truth, simple and clear, storms, chains, exemption, board decision, fines removed. And then someone from the back yelled, so you think you're above the rules? I felt heat rise in my chest. No, I said steady. I think the law applies to everyone, including HOAs. Emergency vehicles can use necessary safety equipment. That's not special treatment. That's the law. Patricia stood up and claimed my chains had damaged the roads, gouged asphalt, repairs, fees, all of it with zero evidence. Richard looked confused. Steve asked for reports. Martha asked for documentation. Patricia had nothing but attitude and a story. The room divided like a crack in ice. That night at 2 a.m, I heard a car idling outside my house, headlights off, engine running. I looked out the window, and my stomach did that slow drop. I called the non-emergency line. A deputy showed up, talked to the driver, the car rolled away. Mike called me after. Plates came back to Patricia. Deputy says she was taking photos of your house. That was it. That's when my attorney said, we go on offense. Cease and desist. Temporary restraining order. Hearing next week. In court, Patricia's lawyer tried to spin it like I was weaponizing the system to dodge HOA accountability, like I was some rebel with tire chains and an agenda. Marcus laid out the pattern: notices, illegal fines, false complaints, surveillance at 2 a.m. Judge Foster, 60-something, sharp eyes, listened, took notes, then looked right at Patricia. What I'm seeing goes beyond HOA duties, she said blunt. This is harassment. Sitting outside his home taking photos at 2 a.m. is stalking behavior. Temporary restraining order granted, 30 days, no contact, no property, no complaints without evidence reviewed by the full board. Patricia looked like she'd swallowed a lemon and a lawsuit. The 30 days passed quiet. The follow-up hearing came, and Patricia stood up looking different. Less polished. Tired. Worn down. She apologized, said she'd been dealing with personal issues, said she'd resigned as HOA president, said she was in therapy. Judge extended the order for 6 months. Modified it so she could attend meetings at a distance, and that was that. Life, slowly, stitched itself back together. Richard became president. The bylaws got updated. The chains came off when the roads cleared, which felt like irony with a sense of humor. Then, almost a year after that first ridiculous confrontation, we got a call at the station, medical emergency, Cascade Heights address, and when I saw it, my throat went tight. Patricia Morrison's house. We arrived and her ex-husband was outside, frantic, saying she collapsed, pills. He found her on the living room floor. Inside, she was barely breathing, lips blue, bottles scattered like broken promises. It looked intentional. And listen, I'm not proud of what I felt in that first half second. I'm human. There was a flicker of something, anger, history, all of it. Then training snapped in like a switch, because that's what the job does to you. Airway. Breathing. Circulation. Naloxone just in case. Vitals. Oxygen. Keep her with us. I leaned close and said, Patricia, stay with us. We're getting you help. Her eyes fluttered open for a moment, recognition flashed, and then she slipped under again. We stabilized her, loaded her up, and as the ambulance doors closed, her ex-husband grabbed my arm, crying. "Thank you," he said, "even after everything." "It's my job," I told him, simple as that, because it was and because the truth is, saving someone's life doesn't come with an asterisk. She survived. Psychiatric care. Moved away to family out of state. I never saw her again. And that left me with a weird kind of closure I didn't expect, because I'd wanted justice, real consequences, for the harassment, the lies, the way she tried to mess with my career, and I got some of that through the courts and the board and the restraining order. But standing in her living room fighting to keep her alive, I also felt this heavy sadness, like, man, how broken do you have to be to turn tire chains into a war? A few months later, the HOA created a community service award, and here's the part that still makes me shake my head. They gave the first one to me. Richard handed me a plaque in front of the neighborhood, thanked me for my service, and the room clapped. Even some of the people who'd avoided eye contact earlier. I hung that plaque on my wall not because I needed applause, but because it felt like the community saying, we saw what happened, we learned, we're trying to be better. Now when winter hits, I put the chains on without hesitation. The sound still rattles against the wheel wells, clack, 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 and instead of feeling like a threat, it just sounds like readiness. So here's what I want to ask you when somebody's clearly wrong, clearly abusing power, clearly making your life hell. What does justice actually look like? Is it punishment? Is it accountability? Is it compassion? And where's the line between protecting yourself and becoming part of the same ugly cycle? Drop your take in the comments. Seriously, I want to hear your experiences with HOAs, petty authority, workplace fallout, any of it. Tell me what you think is fair and what isn't, and if you've ever had to stand your ground against someone who just wouldn't let go, share how you handled it. Because I'll tell you right now, sometimes the biggest fights start over the smallest things, like a set of tire chains trying to keep one tired firefighter from sliding off the road.